Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on the 2024 election.
Oh, yeah.
It was a real political earthquake.
It really was.
Trump back in the White House.
I know.
And he didn't just eke it out. He even won the popular vote.
Yeah, it was not...
It was a landslide.
It was a landslide?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So we've got this great article from NBC News.
Okay.
It really unpacks how this happened.
Okay.
So we're going to dive into all the forces that led to Trump winning.
Interesting.
And Harris losing.
Well, it's fascinating because everyone missed the signs.
It really is.
The polls, the pundits, all pointing in a different direction.
It's like the political version of a surprise ending.
Totally.
So one of the big things that jumps out from this article is the gender gap. It played a huge role.
Yeah.
And it seems like men were really dissatisfied.
Yes.
Particularly young men.
And that was a major factor in pushing Trump over the top.
Yeah, this disillusionment among men. It's interesting how that might have connected with Trump's message. This outsider disruptor kind of image.
Yeah, like he tapped into this feeling of being overlooked, unheard.
Totally. And here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago, Trump was like
a
political pariah.
Right.
Multiple prosecutions, even assassination attempts.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be the end for any politician.
You really would.
Yeah.
But it seems like those events might have actually helped him.
How so?
It kind of reinforced this image of him as a fighter.
Oh, okay.
Taking on the establishment.
Interesting.
Like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And this time around, his campaign was a lot more, well, normal, I guess you could say. Less chaos, more strategy.
Okay.
The article mentions Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles.
I know those names.
Yeah, they're both very seasoned political operatives.
They are.
And they were really key in this more disciplined approach.
So LaCivita, known for his work on the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth campaign. And Wiles, a veteran Florida strategist.
Yep.
She helped Trump win Florida in 2016 and 2020.
Both times.
So their involvement really signals a change.
Yeah.
More calculated, less impulsive.
Than what we've seen from Trump in the past.
Totally.
It's like they finally gave him the playbook he never had. And part of that playbook was a laser focus on young men.
Interesting.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Barron Trump gets some of the credit for this.
Trump's son.
Yeah, he pushed for this unconventional podcast strategy, getting his dad on shows like Bussin' with the Boys.
Oh, wow.
And Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah.
Those are platforms where young men actually hang out.
Right.
It allowed Trump to bypass traditional media.
Interesting.
And speak directly to them.
Yeah.
Potentially in a way that felt more authentic.
Right. Relatable.
Exactly.
So smart.
The article even mentions that the Harris campaign considered doing something similar.
Really?
Maybe even putting her on Rogan. But ultimately they decided against it.
I see.
It makes you wonder what would happen if they had.
Yeah, what if?
And then there's the Kennedy endorsement.
Oh.
Talk about a game changer.
It really was.
RFK Jr.
Wow.
From a Democratic dynasty.
No.
Endorsing Trump.
You don't see that every day.
It must have made people who'd written Trump off really reconsider.
I bet it did.
It was a huge validation for Trump.
Yeah.
Especially after what the article calls a summer slump for his campaign. Kennedy has that name recognition.
He does.
And he appeals to voters who are disillusioned with the Democrats. He lent a certain legitimacy to Trump.
Totally.
It's like he was saying, hey, even I, a Kennedy, believe in this guy.
Powerful.
And it wasn't just Kennedy.
Right.
Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk.
Oh, wow.
Those aren't your typical Republican endorsement.
Not at all.
They were building this image of Trump as a maverick.
Yeah.
Someone beyond party lines.
The Fed ally.
They were tapping into this desire for change.
Totally.
The rejection of the status quo.
Voters who felt like the system wasn't working.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we've got this unexpected comebacks.
Right.
Fueled by a savvy campaign. Strategic endorsements.
Yeah.
A focus on a demographic that usually votes Democrat.
Interesting.
But what about Kamala Harris?
Right.
She had a whole other set of challenges.
Totally. Yeah, while Trump was riding this wave of renewed support.
Right.
Harris had a very different and probably much harder path.
It seems like from the start,
the
Harris campaign missed a big opportunity.
What do you mean?
They held back on interviews.
Okay.
Limited media appearances.
Why the cautious approach?
It seems like they underestimated how important it was to get her message out early.
To introduce her to the country?
Exactly.
There's a quote from a Democratic strategist in the article, Caitlin Lagaki.
Okay.
She says, The gender gap is going to be the story of the next 20 years.
Wow.
It seems like Harris, being the first woman of color to run, faced unique challenges.
It's like she was walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
Trying to balance so many hopes and expectations.
From so many different groups.
Yes.
Right?
And then there were the internal conflicts.
Yeah.
Tension between the Biden and Harris camps.
Oh, interesting.
Was there sabotage from the Biden team?
The article kind of paints a picture of a divided Democratic Party.
Okay.
Some Biden allies just didn't want to let go.
Even when it was clear Biden wasn't going to win.
Right.
They were clinging to the past.
Mm-hmm.
Afraid to embrace the future that Harris represented.
Interesting.
That delay, Biden waiting to step aside.
Yeah.
That might have cost Harris
time and momentum.
Exactly.
It would definitely put her in a tough spot.
She inherited a struggling campaign.
Yeah.
And had way less time to connect with voters.
Tough situation.
Speaking of connecting with voters.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Brat Summer.
What was that again?
It seemed like Harris was riding high for a bit.
Okay.
There's this wave of enthusiasm, this idea of women embracing their power.
I remember that.
What happened to that energy?
Yeah.
Did it fade?
Or did something happen after the September debate?
Maybe.
It's hard to say what caused it.
Right, could be lots of things.
Strategic decisions, external events, the changing dynamics.
Yeah.
But that initial momentum, the Brat Summer energy, it wasn't there by the end.
Interesting.
We can't talk about Harris's challenges without talking about Biden.
Of course not.
His performance in that June debate wasn't exactly his best.
Not great.
How did his team react to that?
Well, I mean...
Was there denial about his chances?
The article says there was some reluctance, Biden's inner circle, to admit what was happening.
Like they were hoping for a miracle.
When the signs pointed in the opposite direction.
Exactly.
And that delay really hurt Harris.
Yeah, she was suddenly in the spotlight.
Yeah.
With no time to build her own campaign.
She was set up to fail.
It was a tough situation, for sure.
Speaking of tough situations.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this gender divide.
Okay.
The article really emphasizes it.
As a defining thing in this election.
Absolutely.
It seems like a lot of men,
particularly white men without college degrees,
felt disillusioned.
Yeah, maybe even resentful.
About changes in society and culture.
That dissatisfaction was a driving force behind Trump's win.
Interesting.
Almost like two different Americas voted.
Wow.
Men and women saw things completely differently.
Fascinating.
And the messaging from the campaigns played into that.
In what way?
Remember J.D. Vance?
Trump's running mate?
Yeah, and his childless cat ladies comment.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought that was dismissive.
Yeah, of educated, unmarried women.
Yeah.
But it resonated with certain male voters.
Who felt like their values were being ignored.
Yeah, exactly. So it tapped into this sense of grievance.
Like they were being left behind.
Right.
So we have this perfect storm.
Trump tapping into this dissatisfaction among men. Harris facing an uphill battle.
From the beginning.
And the gender gap just getting wider.
Wow.
It's this complex mix of social, cultural, and political forces.
Yeah, and to really get this election,
you have to understand all that.
Absolutely. When you look at the results, it paints a pretty clear picture of Trump's win. It wasn't just a repeat of 2016.
Right.
This was bigger, a larger mandate.
It was decisive.
It really makes you think about where America is right now.
The article quotes Alex Bruzovitz.
Okay.
He worked with Barron Trump on that podcast strategy.
Right.
He said this election was about America seeing the real Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
What do you make of that?
Well, Bruzovitz, he's a rising star in conservative circles.
Oh, yeah.
He seems to be saying that there's this core authenticity to Trump.
Beneath the surface.
Yeah, beneath the bombast.
And that really resonated with voters.
It speaks to the power of personality.
Yeah, maybe a fatigue with a typical politician.
It's like voters were saying, we've seen the polished politician and we're not buying it anymore.
They wanted something real, even if it was rough around the edges.
Exactly.
And that raises a big question.
What happens next?
What does a second Trump term even look like?
With a Senate that's probably going to be more favorable.
And we still don't know about the House.
Lots of uncertainty.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
right.
I think we need to step back.
Okay.
And look at the big picture. What trends does this election reveal about American politics?
Well, one thing that's undeniable is the polarization.
The urban-rural divide, the education gap, the gender gap.
It's getting worse.
And it's not clear if we can fix it.
It feels like we're watching the country fall apart.
Yeah, and social media isn't helping.
Is Echo chambers.
It's partisan news.
A system that rewards extreme views.
So where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question.
Can we find common ground?
Or is America just going to become more divided? This election showed us the problems with our democracy.
Yeah, it was a real wake-up call.
The question is, do we want to fix them?
We can't just ignore each other.
We have to talk.
Listen to each other.
Find things we agree on.
It won't be easy.
But it's the only way.
We've talked a lot about what happened.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about the gender gap. What does that mean for the future?
The article quotes Caitlin Legacki again.
Yeah.
The gender gap is going to be the story of the next 20 years.
That's a big statement.
What do you think she means? Legacki, she's a big name in Democratic politics.
Yeah.
She's saying that things are changing.
The gender gap isn't just some random thing.
It shows how differently men and women see the world.
How they see the government, the future of the country.
This election really made those differences clear.
The article talks about the dissatisfied man. What makes them so dissatisfied?
There's a lot going on.
Economic anxiety, cultural shifts, a feeling of losing power.
They feel disillusioned.
And politicians are taking advantage of that.
Offering easy answers.
Blaming other people.
It's not just about money.
It's about identity.
Feeling left behind.
As the world changes.
And the media makes it worse.
These echo chambers.
Where they just hear what they already believe.
It's a vicious cycle.
Everyone gets more extreme.
We need to break out of that.
We need to listen.
Understand each other.
Find common ground.
Even when it feels impossible.
It's hard.
But it's the only way forward.
If we want to save our democracy,
we need to find solutions that work for everyone.
No matter their gender, race, religion, or political beliefs.
This election has given us so much to think about.
It's a turning point in our history.
And it's up to us to decide what happens next. So it feels like we're really at a crossroads here.
Yeah.
Do we keep going down this path?
Of division?
Or do we try to find a way to come together?
It's a big choice.
With big consequences for the country.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep thinking about what it all means. We've seen all these forces at play.
The gender gap, the dissatisfaction, the desire for change.
Where do we even go from here?
Right. What does it mean for the future?
Maybe this election.
Yeah.
As unexpected as it was. It will be what gets us talking.
You mean a real national conversation?
Yeah, one that goes beyond just politics.
And digs into the anxieties people have.
The things they're hoping for.
It won't be easy.
No.
There are going to be disagreements.
For sure.
But we can't avoid it anymore.
The stakes are too high.
Our democracy depends on us talking to each other.
Listening to each other.
Trying to understand.
And finding that common ground.
Even when it's hard.
Well, that's our deep dive into the 2024 election.
We've covered a lot.
The results, the forces behind them, what it means for the future.
And it's a lot to think about.
It really is.
Understanding these things.
Having these conversations.
And just always learning more.
Those are the first steps to a better future.
A future where we can come together.
Build a more just world for everyone.
That's it for this episode, folks.
Thanks for listening.
Keep being curious, keep asking questions, and never stop learning.